If China were to invade Taiwan tomorrow and the U.S. made the political decision to help Taiwan with its defense, what would you expect China to do? And what would the impact be for the U.S. and for China?
If China really wanted to get our attention, the 13% of drugs that are directly imported to the U.S. from China, they could block those. Second, they could put pressure on their trading partner, India, who makes most of the rest of our drugs, and say, you know, we'll give you enough active pharmaceutical ingredients to make drugs for the rest of the world, but we don't want you shipping any to the U.S. And then India will have to decide what they're going to do. And keep in mind, India and China together, the two largest nations, are a third of the world's population, and they only account for about 4% of the expenditure. We're 4% of the population and account for 40%. So there's a lot of leverage that China would have over India in that battle. The other thing, I've looked at where new plants have been built to make API over the last decade, and the U.S. has dropped dramatically. Europe has dropped dramatically, except for Italy, Spain, and Portugal, perhaps. But where are the four places that have had the biggest growth in new API facilities? China, India, Israel, and Taiwan. Now, do any of those have geopolitical risk in them? All of them do. So it would just make the problem worse.
Well, on the chip side, Taiwan holds the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, with TSMC in Taiwan, which is largest semiconductor manufacturing company and does advanced chips, does foundational chips. If I'm China and I invade the island, I want to take over TSMC as one of my main objectives, so that I don't have to worry about getting chips from the United States or anybody else anymore, and I can realize my self-sufficiency goals. I think, you know, among other objectives, that would be one thing that China would be looking for. The U.S. probably would be looking to prevent that. Maybe already is talking with Taiwan about what that kind of scenario looks like, so that we don't end up in that position. But I think what that really illustrates is that the flow of chips is again, this is a dependency game. So if China takes Taiwan and gets access to TSMC and doesn't need us anymore, we have a lot less leverage to either deter China's, you know, aggression against Taiwan or stop that, at least from an economic sense. So we need to act now, right? We need to think about what we can do on the manufacturing equipment, as I said, but also think about new tools like a Section 421 China-specific safeguard that contemplates an import surge and doesn't require the U.S. to actually have any injury yet. It just needs to be threatened by injury. We don't have that tool at our disposal now. We could put that in place, and we could put ourselves in a much better situation going forward in the, you know, probably likely event that we do see that under Xi's tenure.
The bottom line is that microelectronics are in everything that make modern life possible. 90% of printed circuit boards are coming out of Asia, 60% are coming out of China. A conflict like the one you suggest would inevitably lead to immediate challenges to import the goods that we need, and that's why a domestic source is critically important. We've already got it for certain bespoke defense applications. We need it for critical infrastructure, and we just need to expand in general the capacity that is there. There is no surge capacity at the moment for microelectronics and manufacturing in the United States. So the conflict you're describing, which is on the minds of many people in this town I know, is, I think, a very real threat to our supply chains. Business leaders see it, leaders in the military see it, and that's why we need to act and not watch other nations who are trying to be part of this shift out of China capture those markets.
Yeah, so I think, so on the biotechnology side, I think, so the critical medicine is kind of the main thing, right? China has legislation in place to stop those exports, so it's kind of prepared to take these steps very quickly, and I think that would be a logical immediate. You would really need to be prepared for that. That would be an automatic thing. I mean, on the more innovative drug side, some of these have longer cycles. So, but then you start thinking about CDMOs and some of these parts that are more deeply embedded in the innovation chain there. I do think it's, speaking a little bit beyond biotechnology, I do think that, of course, it would be an objective for the PLA to take TSMC, but it would, in my analysis, be very difficult for them to get access to the factories and make sure that they're still producing. But of course, it would still have a similar effect that you would lose that capacity nonetheless in such an event. Yeah.